Dames en here, die akademiese prosesie sal binnekort inbeweeg. U word versoek om asseblief op te staan. Ladies and gentlemen, the academic procession will enter shortly. You are kindly requested to stand. Bomma le botate, molokoloko wa dirutegi o tla tsena mo nakong ye kopana. Le gopelwa go ema.
By the power vested in me, I hereby constitute this assembly as a legal congregation of the University of Pretoria. During this assembly, degrees with all the associated rights and privileges will be conferred on the candidates whose names appear in the program. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin by requesting you to join us in a few moments of silent prayer or meditation to give thanks for the achievements of our students. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as Vice Principal of the University of Pretoria, I would like to extend a very hearty word of welcome to you at this graduation ceremony. In particular, I would like to welcome the following people: the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Information Technology, Professor Maharaj, the Deputy Director for the Department of Enrollment and Student Administration, Dr. Liebenberg. I'd like to add a special word of welcome to Professor Surabh Singh, who is the Executive Dean at the University of Johannesburg. Also chairpersons of schools, heads of department, directors, emeriti and honorary professors, and other lecturers and their spouses. Supervisors, co-supervisors and external examiners of the doctorandi, representative of the Student Research Council, Representative Council, who will present the SRC Academic Honorary Colours, all those upon whom the degrees will be conferred this morning, all spouses, parents, and other parties, as well as dignitaries whom we may not be aware of. Ladies and gentlemen, graduates of the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Information Technology. Universities around the world vary very greatly in many ways, in purpose, size, quality, and the extent to which they are international. But most of them have one thing in common. They're very good at holding ceremonies. And of all those many events, graduation ceremonies are probably the most important. Graduations are also of enormous importance to us at the University of Pretoria, and they are even more significant for you. And as our valued students, you are about to be awarded your degrees and to be formally and publicly recognized for your achievements. Graduation ceremonies are also of great importance to your parents, other family members, partners, maybe your children, and to everyone else who has supported you, cared about you, and helped you to reach this extraordinary and life-changing stage in your lives, and who, at least some of whom, are here today with you. The University of Pretoria is almost 110 years old. It's one of the largest and most highly respected universities in South Africa and in Africa. We have well over 50,000 students, and we have graduated, again, well over 250,000 students in the 110 years. And over 25% of South Africa's engineers come from this faculty. In 2016, the university was listed in 2 of the main global rankings of universities, ranked in the top 600 in the QS World Rankings, out of nearly 4,000 universities that were considered and more than 1,000 that were ranked. We have maintained our position as number 4 in South Africa, and in addition, the University of Pretoria was one of only 3 South African universities that improved their research performance over the 2015-2016 period, progress which Takis has been successful in achieving over the past few years. It is now the case that half of our research publications produced by our University of Pretoria academics are the result of collaboration with international colleagues. Further testimony to the quality of the university and its staff is the fact that 32 academics are in the top 1% in the world in their fields. Of those, 5 are here in engineering. And we have over 250 research partnerships with some 68 countries. The Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Information Technology is recognized for its position among the top 300 universities in the world in the fields of electrical and electronic engineering, civil engineering, mechanical and aeronautical engineering, computer science and information systems, and mining engineering. So a degree from the university as prestigious and highly respected as the University of Pretoria is an indication of your ability, but also a sign of your worth as one of a few highly qualified people in South Africa whose skills and knowledge have been accredited by this university. Ladies and gentlemen, in this ceremony, we will award no less than 17 doctoral degrees, a total of 149 postgraduate degrees and 288 undergraduate degrees. That means that over a third of the degrees awarded today are at the postgraduate level, something that I think the Dean and his staff should be very proud of. Turning to the national environment, I'm sure you are aware that 2015 and 2016 were difficult years for South African universities as protests disrupted normal academic activities across the country. The University of Pretoria worked hard with our students as the internal stakeholders to establish ways of engaging and to keep open channels of structured communication between the university and its students. As a result of those efforts and the efforts of many people, the university lost relatively little academic time, and we completed our exams and the 2016 year, and that's why we are here today. Graduates, the fact that you have succeeded despite some difficulties is a tribute to your determination to succeed in achieving the goals to which you committed yourselves. Whether as engineers from one of the engineering disciplines, experts in the disciplines of the built environment, those in IT, you are probably better prepared now for your future than many who have preceded you in your professions. All your experiences here on the campus will have left you with a very clear sense of how important university education is and of your responsibility to make that reality widely known in society. Some of the disciplines in engineering and the built environment have ancient and very honorable histories. The Mayans, Egyptians, Chinese, and Romans built amazing structures, such as the Great Wall of China, engineered sophisticated road systems across much of Western Europe. They had none of the theoretical knowledge and skills that support civil engineering today. And while the early inhabitants of the world's earliest cities were not skilled urban planners or architects, they created cities whose remaining streets and houses are visible and identifiable more than 8,000 years later. The history of electronic engineering and IT, as we know it today, have much shorter histories, but have changed the world in ways that were unimaginable even 50 years ago. The internet became operating in its most primitive form less than 60 years ago. You may be amused to know that I and some of my colleagues sitting on this stage can probably remember sending the first emails when email was first invented. And the prototype cell phone was developed about 40 years ago, with the first commercially available phones on sale about 35 years ago, at a cost of some $4,000 and looking a bit like bricks. Graduates, you have learned in your years here at Tucky's so much that is unimaginably far away from what started long ago, whether we consider 8,000 years or 100 years. The scientific and applied knowledge that you have gained is far different from those of earlier years. Your studies here have prepared you to make possible major strides and differences in a world which is much in need of improvement. Your chosen field is one of which you must be proud, and your achievement in it is something with which you can be exceptionally pleased. Your disciplines have an ever-enriching history. In our complex modern society, each of you has an essential and critical role to play. I hope you will make the most of what today brings. Celebrate with those who are with you, be proud, but never forget what society needs of you and how much you have to give. In concluding, let me thank you for your hard work and your family and sponsors for their support. I hope you will take a moment to thank them. And finally, our warmest congratulations to each and every one of you and to all of those who have supported you along the way. Thank you. I now request the Dean and supervisors to introduce to me the candidates present whose names appear in the program.
Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical Engineering. Otim Angwech. Andre Baker. Mpho Baloy. Edouan Delangen. Edwald Erasmus with distinction. He also wins the Electrical Engineering Project Prize for the best final year project in electrical engineering and the Electrical Engineering Prize for the best student in electrical engineering. Mozadzi Gamanya. Jabu Shlase. Francisco Iturralde. Fungai Jaji Wewe. Gareth Jones. Keith Kachiora. Kutso Makena. Aisha Machache. Palesa Manko. Mpo Marota. Zelane Mashilo. Lebochang Masike. Genkwa Mbele. Dylan McGaffin. Sefiso Mokele. Bahang Monsiwa. Khotsiono Motsawakasele. Hein Nadia with distinction. He also wins the second best electrical engineering prize for the second best final year project. Chennai Ngorima. Derek Niemand. Mbogeni Nkosi. Rashmika Pillai. Pamelo Pizzione. Kiobache Poti. Joe Murray Pretorius. Ivanike Prinslua. Tabang Puana. Peter Scholes. Angelique Scott. Jositebe Sebila. Machlapane Sebotoa. Adam Small. Michael Tawil. Marno Zitzman. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Engineering in Electronic Engineering. Lara Beneka. Desmond Bezuidenhout. Peter Botha. Cornelis Brink with distinction. Estine Clausen. Ernst Kutsia. Kumbirai Deve. Pierre Dutoy. Monique Gerber. Ikram Kaur. Cornelis Grobler. Neil Heckroot. Daniel Herbst. Garrick Jardine. Andrew Jones. Kirsty Jones. Johannes Jordan. Joshua Hubert. Ochodiseng Kaloate. Mohammed Wahid Khan. Devin Kinghorn. Jolosejo Kototsi. Matthew Lockwood. Lehan Lotter with distinction. He also wins the second best electronic engineering prize for the second best final year student in electronic engineering. Janssen Loubser. Pinil Madondo. Tendaishe Matofora. Botata Mokwena. Charles Nadia. Sambua Nduzukula. Nicholas Nell. Niashaje Pawandiwa. Sean Pritchard. Neil Roth. Pasangili Ramakrishnan. John Rogers. Stephanus Skuman. Brandon September. Arun Sivakumaran with distinction. He also wins the third best prize for the third best final year student in electronic engineering. Jean Smith. Kevin Smith. Andrew Stander. Elizabeth Stanley. Alkmaar Swart. Leandri van der Walt. Hendrik van der Walt. Vickers van der Westhuizen. Sebastian Volker. Karl Wessels with distinction. He also wins the Electronic Engineering Prize for the Best Student in Electronic Engineering and also the Electronic Engineering Prize for the Best Final Year Project in Electronic Engineering. Benjamin Williams. Caroline Winning. Johannes Swartz. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering. Stefan Bacheror with distinction. Christian Barnard. Salome Barnard. Alexander Bert with distinction. Rudy Boshoff. Helen Bosma. Louis Buota. Dwayne Breitenbach with distinction. Bianca Brink. Charles Chivenega. Lauren Christopher. Franz Kutsia. Jacobus Kutsia. Nicolas Kutsia. Peter Conradi. Jason Crawford. Oliver Cribb. Liam Curran. Muhammad Dawood. Joandre Dibia. Richard Dietlifs with distinction. Hendrik de Kok. Kyle Della. David de Villiers with distinction. Marliet Dickinson. Sibusiso Jlamini. Jan Lo Dorfling with distinction. Sibonelo Dube. Johan Duplessis. Louis Duplessis. Daniel Duploy. Dylan Duvanacha. Kwan Edwards. Marnus Alles. Michelle Elliott. Justin Ellis. Gerhardus Farrell. Philip Veldesi. Marco Ferreira. Martinez Ferreira with distinction. Dylan Fisher. Charles Fourie. Melanie Gerke. Oscar Khadebe. Heinrich Hatting. Renier Hatting with distinction. Kyle Hay. Richard Halls. Reinhard Honeyball. David Hunt. Yasir Husnain. Muhammad Ammar Husnain. Gerhard Janssen van Rensburg. Daniel Janssen van Vuren. Vineet John. Leet Jordan van Zeel. Francois Hubert. Iyaz Kala. Brighton Kazembe. Chepo Kekana. Bradley Coleman with distinction. Johan Kotsia with distinction. Mitchell Kyle. Jason Langman. Melissa Lewana. Quan Chi Lin. Carl Lowe. Francois Lowe. Kyle Luber. Kiletso Maake. Tato Mabanga. Consolence Mabelane. Umbugiseni Mashlango. Sejolo Mashlare. Pumelela Malinga. Lefafa Mapotoma. Mesaveni Marakala. Hendrik Maritz. Modupe Motolo. Muzakonsuate Machavange. Daniel McKee. Jonathan McMurty. Stephanus Mintz. Andre Meyer. Peter Meyer. Makonosoke Mnisi. Redani Mobeleni. Kutluano Mojakebe. Omoholo Monametsi. Sean Niebuhr with distinction. Sebolache Ntuli. Sipesishle Nzoia. Martin Ortmann. Ashwini Pandey. Dylan Puffett. Christian Pachau with distinction. He also wins the medal of the Engineering Council of South Africa for the best student in the final year in the School of Engineering. Andres Pienza with distinction. Matthew Perry. Solomon Pila. Dean Pretorius. Chantal Prinslua. Margaret Radaman. Ashrima Ramprasad. Martin Renken with distinction. He also wins the award for the Vice Chancellor and Principal. The award consists of a silver medal as well as a cash prize and certificate, and is awarded to candidates for outstanding undergraduate academic achievement during all the undergraduate years of study. Shane Robbins with distinction. Sean Robertson. Oscar Roers. Casperus Rousseau. Dion Rousseau. Adrian Roux with distinction. Sean Saunders. Tillen Scholes. Ebby Selby with distinction. Siabonge Simelane. Mpo Sito. Jared Smith. Stefan Smith. Jared Smith. Jordan Smith with distinction. Mitchell Spencer. Paul Sully. Peter de Wet Taljaard. Marshall Valentin Tapufamaniei. Daniel Texera. Bradley Thompson. Olebocheng Tsitsi. Maché van Asvegen. Karen van Bart. Willem van Blerk. David van der Lingen. Delco van der Walt. Jan van der Walt. Ruan van der Westhuizen with distinction. Eduard van Heerden. Deandre van Niekerk. Joshua van Rooyen with distinction. Victor van Weesmeertje. Stefan van Zeel. Andrea Vaz de Souza. Fritz Eugene Fillion. Philippus Wessels with distinction. Karel Wilken. Tobias Winterbach. Martin Visser. Cameron Wright. Nef Yimbo. Alain Zachariah. Madam Vice Chancellor, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Engineering. Tyrone Allen. Alexander Amaral. Wilhelmus Botha. Jaco Botma. Kevin Cowdray. Leiden de Roscha. Jaco de Lange. Gavin Fouchier with distinction. He also wins the Computer Engineering Prize for the best final year project in computer engineering and the third best Computer Engineering Prize for the third best final year student in computer engineering. Austin George. Friedrich Krosskopf. Brett Hatton. Jano Hendricks with distinction. Charles Hildebrandt. Kurt Jordan. Pratik Kamdabukone. Jason Cody Kessel. Johan Langenhoven. Wesley Maggie. Laura Martinez. Johannes Marx. Hassani Masudi. Nsosa Molapo. Kevin Mulligan. Michael Oosthuizen with distinction. He also wins the Computer Engineering Prize for the best student in computer engineering. Noko Ramutla. Sibosiso Sibanyoni. Kent Smith. Wayne Smith. Andre Sneeman. Vian Sneeman with distinction. Esmery Stein. Tian Stolz. Johannes Stradom with distinction. He also wins the Computer Engineering Prize for the best final year project in computer engineering and the second best Computer Engineering Prize for the second best final year student in computer engineering. Jean van der Berg. Henry van der Westhuizen. Grant Zinsman with distinction. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Science Honours in Applied Mechanics. Lumbala Bondo. Sibosiso Jlamini. Nkabisi Matanda. Puti Matsola. Mpo Nengudza. Jabulani Intimane. Khangalani Samela. Stefan van Dijk. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Engineering Honours in Bioengineering. Bernard Baumeister with distinction. Jacques van der Westhuizen with distinction. Bachelor of Engineering Honours in Electrical Engineering, Sakiseni Buthelezi. Nevin George. Tian Geldenhuys with distinction. Rohan Godard with distinction. John Koza. Siabonga Langa. Justin Lotter with distinction. Ambrose Njepo. Lerato Sima. Mbongeni Sibisi. Shadil Singh with distinction. Bachelor of Honours in Electrical Engineering, Shanae Horn. Gert Kotza. Andres Malinga. Molisa Moyo. Dwayne Stradom. Lawrence Tamai. Bachelor of Engineering Honours in Mechanical Engineering, Dylan Armfield with distinction. Campbell Bam with distinction. Tamsin Bam with distinction. Andrea Benecker with distinction. Rory Bennett. Johannes Baranga. Vihan Boyser with distinction. Henry Breed. Leon Brits. Matthew Church. Ronald Dutoy with distinction. Ryan Dyer. Brendan Hall. Jordan Jacobs. Devin Johnson with distinction. Jacques Uester. Paolo Cariati. Ricardo Ludica with distinction. Charles Marais. Bongani Mashaba. Raymond Mashao. Rendani Matoho. Wilhelm Moll. Johann Müller. Craig Nietzsche. Simeon Pinar with distinction. Karthik Puvendran. Isaac Setsedi. Marcel Sluwerdweg with distinction. Rowan Stein. Herman Strauss. Jean-Pierre Theron with distinction. Peter Truter. Nico van der Merwe with distinction. Ruan van der Merwe. Joseph van der Walt. Rudolf van der Walt. Daniel van Heerden. Johannes van Zeel. Andre Vosloer with distinction. Tamarin Wolf. Bachelor of Engineering Honours in Microelectronic Engineering, Edward Hunter. Janae Kruger with distinction. Johannes Venter with distinction. Bachelor of Engineering Honours in Computer Engineering, Martinez Green with distinction. Yako Murray with distinction. Aaron Shaker. Carissa Subramani. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Science in Applied Science Mechanics. Kanwai Katamba. Reina Combo. Jean-Marc Mojanye Katumba. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Engineering in Bioengineering. Gathreda Blachnoot with distinction. Master of Engineering in Electronic Engineering. Joshua Sendel with distinction. David van Wyk. Master of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering. Youngwin Chai with distinction. Marlies Cowley with distinction. Hadi Khotsinet with distinction. Andrew Hall with distinction. Gareth Howard with distinction. Johannes Joubert with distinction. Dominique Kafka with distinction. Berno Kolmar with distinction. Stuart Leith with distinction. Martinez Murray with distinction. Tanya Otterman with distinction. Casper Pieterse with distinction. Francois Prinsloo with distinction. Suzanne Roberts with distinction. Stefan Schmidt with distinction. Jacobus Smit. Renier Strauss with distinction. Madam Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with the requirement for the Master of Engineering in Microelectronic Engineering, Sarel van Niekerk. Madam Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidate.
Madam Principal. I introduce to you Ms. Olayinka Adewumi, who has Ms. Olayinka Adewumi. He has been awarded a degree in PhD mechanics, and I need the introduction. It's blank. Yeah. In Adewumi thesis, which is constructor design and optimization of combined microchannel and micropin fin for electronic cooling, in the three-dimensional geometric structure of combined micro heat sink, which comprises of microchannel with micropin fins with optimized pin fin inserts. The micro heat sink investigated in this study were single layers, microchannels, two layers microchannels with parallel and counterflow configuration, three-layer microchannel with parallel and counterflow configuration, the single microchannel with circular, square, and hexagonal microfin pin inserts, and two-layer microchannel with circular shaped micropin fin inserts. Her studies show that the combined heat sink has the potential to improve the thermal performance of the micro heat sink under high heat flux condition, which is important in the design of micro devices. She has published 4 papers in RSI and Accredited Journal and 6 conference presentations. I hereby provide you Mrs. Adewumi for the honor of PhD in Applied Mechanics.
Hold on. I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Hildegard Suzanne Kuhn, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Electronics with a thesis titled Predictive Policing in an Endangered Species Context, Combating Rhino Poaching in the Kruger National Park, prepared under my supervision and Mr. J.H.S. Ruet as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the promovenda developed a mathematical model to predict areas of future rhino poaching locations. Rhino poaching is a serious problem, and current solutions are reactive, as action is only taken once a rhino is poached. This work uses a Bayesian network to understand the rhino poaching problem and is populated with expert knowledge and the sparse available data. Results show that the model can be used as a reasoning tool and decision support aid in the Kruger National Park to minimize poaching events. This work expands the knowledge base of rhino poaching and manages to shift the complex rhino poaching problem to a space where researchers can begin to understand and resolve it. Madam Vice Principal, I request you confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Patrick Tandy Mendy-Teresa, who has compiled with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Electric with a thesis titled Distributed Differential Fault Detection and Identification Algorithm for Smart Grid Applications. In his thesis, the promovendus proposed and developed a new protection algorithm designed to provide high-speed protection for the distribution system integrated with multiple type of DG technologies. The algorithm is independent of DG penetration level and network topology, tolerant to communication failure, and can detect faults over a wide range. 2 articles were published in SCI high-quality journals, and now Patrick is developing the product through TIA funding to patent his work. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Olubenga Olan Revayu Noah, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanics with a thesis titled Experimental, Theoretical and Numerical Investigation of Natural Convection Heat Transfer from Heated Microspheres in a Slender Cylindrical Geometry, prepared under my supervision with Professor Meyer, J.P. Meyer as co-supervisor. The research contributes to the initiative currently undertaken worldwide to develop accident-tolerant fuel for water-cooled reactors. The investigation mainly focused on the transfer of heat from advanced fuel in the form of coated microfuel particles under a helium atmosphere to the cladding tubes of light water-cooled reactor fuel assemblies. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Babatunde Seun Awoyemi, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Electronic Engineering with a thesis titled Resource Allocation Optimization in Heterogeneous Cognitive Radio Networks, prepared under my co-supervision and the supervision of Professor Maharaj. In this thesis, Resource Allocation Optimization in Heterogeneous Cognitive Radio Networks, the promovendors identified the problems of heterogeneity, unmitigated interference, and time delays as the most critical limitations to achieving optimal results for cognitive radio networks. In addressing these limitations, the resource allocation solutions that smartly modified conventional concepts of problem formulation and interlinear programming, cooperatives, diversity, and queuing theory are developed and extensively analyzed. Solutions obtained from the analysis were shown to be significant in making network stand out as the most viable next generation wireless communication paradigm. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Jeffrey Baloyi, who has complied with the requirement for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Engineering with a thesis titled Thermodynamic Analysis of Circulating Fluid Device Combustion. Under the supervision of me and with Professor Joshua Meyer as the co-supervisor. In his thesis, thermodynamic analysis of circulating fluidized bed combustor, the PREVENT does analyze the combustor component of a circulating fluidized bed combustor, bonding wood to find the optimal operating condition that will result in minimal entropy generation rate. By utilizing the entropy generation minimization techniques and mathematical expression for entropy generation due to pressure drop, heat transfer, and combustion, he analyzed the optimal condition with air fuel mass ratio that gave minimum entropy generation rate. The optimal configuration was used as a starting point to optimize the combustion further by analyzing the burnt char resulting from combustion operated at the optimal configuration. A wet heat recovery system made up of porous medium packed with hot chars was analyzed to determine the optimal char diameter, which result in minimal system temperature differences between the maximum temperature found inside the char particle and minimal temperature of the fluid found at the inlet. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Tapiwa Moses Chiwewe, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Computer Engineering with a thesis titled Efficient Spectrum Use in Cognitive Radio Networks with Dynamic Spectrum Management, prepared under the supervision of Dr. G.P. Hanke and my co-supervision. In the thesis, the problem of spectrum scarcity and coexistence was addressed by developing a novel cognitive radio protocol that can exploit television white spaces, as well as a game theoretic dynamic spectrum access algorithm that provides scalable, fast convergence spectrum sharing in cognitive radio networks. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Madeleine Lalonde-Combrink, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanical Engineering with a thesis titled Boundary Layer Response to Arbitrary Accelerating Flow, prepared under supervision of Professor Laurent Dalla and Professor Lipatovs from the Moscow Institute of Physics. The thesis, Boundary Layer Response to Arbitrary Accelerating Flow, was aimed at developing a fundamental understanding of the boundary layer response to arbitrary motion. Research objectives were divided into three main activities, namely mathematical formalization for non-inertial bulk flow and boundary layer equations, implementation of set formulations in a numerical solver, and simulations for various applications in arbitrary motion. Numerical simulations were done for laminar flow on a translating plate, rotating disc and rotating cone in axial flow over a range of 70 Gs to 700,000 Gs. The boundary layer profiles, boundary layer parameters, and skin friction coefficients were reported. Three types of boundary layer responses to arbitrary motion were defined. Response type 1 is viscous dominant and mimics the steady state velocity profile. In response type 2, certain regions of the boundary layer are dominated by viscous and others by momentum, and the response type 3 is dominated by momentum. In acceleration, the near wall velocity gradient increases with increasing acceleration. In deceleration, separation occurs as a result of momentum changes in the flow. The mechanisms that cause these responses have been identified using the developed boundary layer equations. In acceleration, the relative frame fictitious terms became a momentum source which results in an increase in velocity gradient at the wall. In deceleration, the relative frame fictitious terms became a momentum sink that induced an adverse pressure gradient and subsequent laminar separation. This work is widely applicable in external aerodynamics and improves the prediction of boundary layer behavior for bluff bodies in flight. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you David Hercules Diamond, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanical Engineering with a thesis titled A Probabilistic Approach to Blade Tip Timing Data Processing, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Aubrey Oberholster as co-supervisor. In his thesis, the promovendus developed a novel approach to blade tip timing data processing using Bayesian statistics for condition monitoring of operational turbo machinery blades, such as steam turbine blades. These blades are exposed to very harsh operating conditions, and failures often lead to serious consequences. The new algorithms can be used to avoid dangerous operating conditions and detect incipient failure with significantly improved confidence. The new approach was comprehensively validated in the laboratory as well as in field applications. The work is now being commercialized. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mr. Msasa Kabea, who has complied with the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Electrical Engineering with a thesis titled Design and Control of a DC Collection Grid for Offshore Wind Farms, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Bansao as co-supervisor. Conventionally, wind farms are built by aggregating together several generators using collector grids to feed power to a common point. Currently, the AC collector grids are employed. However, in offshore wind farms applications, they suffer from a number of shortcomings. These include large size, they are heavy, that is in weight, and also the costs are high. In addition, the transmission distances are restricted because the AC cables that will be used can only function properly at a 50 or 60 kilometers distance. The research investigated the viability of employing DC collector grids in offshore wind farms, as this would overcome the shortcomings of the collector grids. The work demonstrated the viability of this technology, and the candidate has published a number of journal and conference articles. Madam Vice Principal, I request you confer the degree on the candidate.
Hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Johan Dirk Leroux, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Electronic Engineering with a thesis titled Grinding Mill Circuit Control from a plant-wide control perspective, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the promovendus proposes a generic plant-wide control structure for the optimal operation of a grinding mill circuit to achieve the best economic return of a mineral processing plant. The regulatory and supervisory control aims specified by the plant-wide control structure are achieved by model predictive static programming, a novel nonlinear model-based control technique. A nonlinear observer is developed, and results indicate that it is possible to reliably estimate model states and parameters by means of an extended common filter. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mustafa Madawi, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanical Engineering with a thesis titled Study of Flow and Heat Transfer Features of Nanofluids Using Multi-Phase Models, Eulerian Multi-Phase and Discrete Lagrangian Approaches, prepared under the supervision of Professor Mohsen Sharafpour and myself as co-supervisor. In this thesis titled Study of Flow and Heat Transfer Features of Nanofluids Using Multi-Phase Models, the fluid flow and heat transfer characteristics of nanofluids were investigated. Nanoparticles mixed in base fluids may enhance heat transfer and therefore may have practical applications in microelectronics, fuel cells, engine cooling, etc. It is, however, challenging to quantify the enhancement of different types and concentrations of nanofluids. New equations, slip mechanisms, and forces were implemented in a commercial software program by making use of user-defined functions. The focus of the study was specifically to investigate the mechanisms between the nanoparticles and base fluids. These mechanisms were described by making use of two methods, namely a newly defined theoretical model and by numerical simulations. It was found that mass diffusion in nanofluids is the most important phenomenon. Furthermore, the electrostatic forces among particles and Brownian forces are contributing forces in particle migrations and aggregations. Both models were found to be robust and to give good results. 6 journal articles in high-impact international journals and 4 international conference papers were published from this work. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mohammed Mugimi Ardakani, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanical Engineering with a thesis titled Optical, Thermal and Economic Optimization of a Linear Fresnel Collector, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Yosha Meyer as co-supervisor. In his thesis titled Optical, Thermal and Economic Optimization of a Linear Fresnel Collector, the promovendus focused on the optimization of linear Fresnel collectors, a type of concentrated solar power technology, with the aim of maximizing the optical and thermal efficiencies while also minimizing the cost of electricity generation. The multi-objective optimization procedure was implemented in the ANSYS Workbench platform, from where various software programs like spreadsheet calculations, ray tracing analysis, and CFD analysis were automatically executed and incorporated into the optimization. The results indicated that a collector could be optimized by determining the amounts of mirrors, their layout, to maximize optical performance at the lowest cost, while at the same time optimizing the receiver by varying the shape and number of tubes and insulation for optimal thermal performance. The method developed can readily be applied to other concentrated solar power applications, The work was published in 4 peer-reviewed journal articles and 8 papers were presented at international and national conferences. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I introduce to you Lawrence Eugene Olivier, who has complied with the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Electronic Engineering with a thesis titled On Lights Out Process Control in the Mineral Processing Industry, prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the promovendus explores the concept of light-out process control or fully autonomous operation of mineral processing plants. Technologies that contribute to making such operation possible were developed, including fault-tolerant nonlinear model predictive controller, a stochastic method for evaluating nonlinear process controllability in the presence of faults, and an economic operability analysis to evaluate the economic impact of process faults. The successful integration of these technologies shows promise for the possibility of lights-out process control in the near future. Madam Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Madam Vice Principal, I have the honor to introduce to you Martin Manfred Renken for the presentation of the award of the Vice Chancellor and Principal. Martin Manfred Renken complied with all the requirements for the B.Eng degree on 30th November 2016, and the degree was conferred on him today with distinction. He distinguished himself during 2016 as the overall top achiever in the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Information Technology. Madam Vice Principal, I request to you to present the candidate with the award of the Vice Chancellor and Principal.
I hereby present Martin Manfred Renken with the award of the Vice Chancellor and Principal. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the proceedings. Before we close, I would like to invite all present for refreshments afterwards in the tents situated in the front of the Rembrandt Hall. You are requested to stand for the singing of the national anthem and to remain standing until the assembly has been dissolved and the academic procession has left the auditorium. The words of the national anthem are printed on the inside back cover of your program. Please rise. By the powers vested in me, I hereby dissolve this assembly of the University of Pretoria. Thank you.
Gaudeamus